But first, joining us with reaction, former State Department spokesperson Morgan Ortagus, Fox News contributor, former CIA station chief Dan Hoffman, and former Trump White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus. Reince, let's compare. You know a thing or two about the president's dealings with Russia. Let's get your perspective and how you think Putin reads this today.
Well, it's funny. We were just playing that clip from Hillary Clinton talking about a private and public approach. The President Trump lived that every day of his presidency. If you look at the actual actions, not the words, but the actions that President Trump took in addressing Russian wrongdoing, there's over 52 actual sanctions, executive orders, and legislation that the president was responsible for in taking on Russia. In 2017 alone, you had President Trump addressing the Yahoo hack and imposing sanctions. You had Treasury sanctions. How many times was Steve Mnuchin in the press shop addressing and outlining sanctions that we were taking against Russia? You had the CATSA legislation that was signed. There was banned Russian software in the first year. There was export restrictions. There was the Global Magnitsky Act. There was legal weapons. Jim Jordan sort of alluded to it, but there was legal weapons that were actually delivered, lethal weapons, to Ukraine. And there was another 50 other actions taken by the Trump administration. What I just shot off there was just what happened in 2017. And another narrative that's upside down, it was Donald Trump that signed the executive order in September of 2018 addressing Russian interference in American elections. So, yeah, he treated Vladimir Putin decently when he saw him. He was diplomatic. But, you know, so was Ronald Reagan when he met with Mikhail Gorbachev. But Ronald Reagan also said, and he also said that they were the evil empire and they were one of the most evil places on the face of the earth. So you know what? Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump together addressed this issue.
And he walked away from Reykjavik and he gave us a line I use often to this day: trust but verify. You know, Dan Hoffman, you have the great distinction of scaring the hell out of me, both in Singapore and in Helsinki. I mentioned this last night, telling me in Singapore the Chinese were probably following my every move. You were 100% certain. And in Helsinki, you gave me the good news that the Russians were following me and listening to every word I said. They didn't particularly like it, but, you know, I understand. I'm outside of the great country I love, and I'm doing my job. My question to you is, you know Russian intelligence. You know the mind of KGB operatives, former KGB operatives like Putin. What is he thinking tonight?
I think what Vladimir Putin is thinking is that he kind of got the reset that he was looking for. He doesn't want to have to pay a price for having invaded Ukraine and annexed Crimea, used a banned chemical weapon against his own citizens, including in the UK against Sergei Skripal, interfering in our elections, launching that SolarWinds hack and allowing cyber hacking groups to homestead on his territory. What he got today was kind of a reset. Our ambassadors are going back to work in their respective capitals. There's going to be ongoing dialogue between our two nations about strategic issues like cybersecurity and nuclear issues. But there was nothing to really hold Vladimir Putin accountable. And for me, the heroes of today's summit was the free press. They were the ones exposing Vladimir Putin's hypocrisy and false equivalencies and the KGB propaganda that was spewing out of his mouth.
Morgan Ortagus, you work for our mutual friend, former Secretary of State Pompeo. And I asked him about the Biden administration getting lectured on human rights abuses by, of all countries, China in Anchorage, Alaska. I asked him about Putin. We have an offer. Mike Pompeo, he will debate Vladimir. I'll be the U.S. moderator, and Putin can pick the Russian moderator. I'd love to see that debate. I don't think he'd duck and hide the way Biden did and wouldn't do a joint presser.
No.
My question is, you know the minds. You've read the intelligence. You've read the briefings before meetings like this. What is Putin? How does Putin interpret today?
Well, first of all, that would be must-see TV, Sean. You're always must-see TV, but I think we need to make that happen. You know, one of the things that you said earlier that I think Hillary Clinton said, that you need to deal with Putin differently in public and differently in private. You know, I can't tell you that was so much farther from the truth in my experience with Mike Pompeo at the State Department. You know, when Pompeo went out and said something to the press, it's exactly what he said to Putin and to Lavrov, the foreign minister, who he met with many times. And in fact, I think it's dangerous to try and have a public persona and a private persona. That makes no sense to me. Just be exactly who you are. Now, when you're looking at what is Putin trying to get out of this, this is really just, it's really sort of a normal meeting. I don't know why they called it a summit. You know, like you, Sean, my inclination is perhaps they didn't want to put Putin and Biden together because Secretary Blinken was embarrassed in Alaska by the Chinese when they lashed out. And so, of course, that allowed for 45 minutes for Putin to rail against the United States, lie, do all the things that Putin normally does. So I think that there's two big questions that I think that your viewers have to think about, Sean, for the next 4 years. One is we are in a nuclear arms race with China and with Russia right now. This administration may not be talking about it. It's probably not at the front of mind for everyone watching, but you should know that China and Russia are engaged in a nuclear arms race, even if we are closing our eyes and not wanting to deal with it. So if we want to have this administration, President Biden says that he wants to have more talks on nuclear weapons with the Russians. If the Chinese aren't included in this, it's a fallacy. And so that's what we need to be seriously looking at that, and we need to seriously
I think China is even a bigger threat. And China and Russia providing
100.
arms to Iran.
100.
You know, that's an unholy alliance.